Welcome to the podcast, the B2B UnCut podcast. I'm joined today by two very special guests. We've got here Joshua Williams, who's the Director of Digital and E-commerce Marketing at Petra, and Kurt Hoffman, who's the Director of Strategic Accounts at American Eagle. Thank you both for being here with us. Josh, I'm going to start with you as we just jump in here. Tell us your story of how you arrived at Petra, a little bit about how the company grew and evolved, and what was the marketing's role in success there. A three-part question for you, but I'd love to hear a little bit of your story and background.
Sure thing. Well, thank you, Jerry, and thanks for the invitation onto the podcast. I joined Petra about 12 years ago as a PHP developer. So at the time, Petra had just launched a new e-commerce storefront built on Magento then, and I was brought on to help do the programming for that, add on new features, do the maintenance, as well as some of our other web properties. So my background is a lot more on the technical marketing side, but through that, as digital became a kind of a bigger and bigger deal at Petra, we were doing more and more sales through our website. Marketing was going more and more online. I continued to sort of move up in the marketing department, take on more responsibilities, kind of running more of that, all of those processes. 12 years ago when I joined, our primary marketing vehicle was a 1,200-page catalog, something like that we put out twice a year, and we're sending out to tens of thousands of different addresses across the country. And that was an enormous expense and was becoming a older and older marketing tactic. So over time, we have transitioned away from that. Today, we are not sending out any of those catalogs. We do all of our marketing through online channels. We do it through our website, through social, through email, through Google AdWords. So our entire marketing spend at this point has transitioned into digital and online efforts, and that was definitely a big change for us. That has it's worked out well over the years, but there were some bumpy times along the road, and I think we've done a good job since then of doing that transition. And we also moved on to Oro a few years ago. And Oro has been powering our website for 4 years now, 3-4 years now, something like that. And that was also a really big deal for us because it gave us a lot more ability to control the experience, personalize, and do a lot of that. But I think we'll talk a little bit more about that down the road. So I'll turn it back over to you there.
That's great. And Kurt, thank you so much. Kurt, give me a little bit of your background, because I want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself as well.
Yeah,
if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. So basically, last 15, 16 years, I've worked in the digital marketing space, both on the B2B side as well as the B2C side. Our company has primarily been a big producer and builder of complex websites. So what we do a lot is once we have those new tools for our clients, our team markets them and uses them to their fullest extent. So my background basically is in all of the digital marketing aspect, both B2B and B2C side.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Well, I want to jump in. I want to look at the last 3 to 5 years, because I think a lot of people, there's been a lot of shifts happening over the last, let's say, 3 years. Maybe I'll start with you in this, Kurt. How has marketing changed in wholesale/B2B commerce over the last 3 years from your perspective?
Yeah, so it's a good question. Obviously, to Josh's point earlier, we've seen a huge acceleration into digital and less of like the traditional print. That's been happening for quite some time. But what we've seen the last 3 to 5 years is the elephant in the room was COVID, right? A global pandemic, and we had this massive shift of people being able to see each other in person and travel, and being able to go to trade shows and being able to do a lot of that kind of relationship selling. And it migrated in the B2B space into digital interactions, whether that's web conferences or whether that's customizing tools and your web experience and your marketing experience to be all online. So we saw this really, really fast shift into it. Our company obviously produces websites. It was a big, big change as far as a lot of tried and true traditional companies coming to us and saying, we really need to step up our presence here. Budget shifted, ideas shifted, interaction shifted. I think the ability to be comfortable making purchases in the B2B space online instead of through a vendor really, really has accelerated in the last 3 to 5 years. So now you have these sophisticated tools and you have these sophisticated abilities to market. And that's really what we've seen probably accelerate more in the last 3 to 5 years than the last 15.
Interesting. How does that resonate with your experience, Josh? Like, what have you seen over the last few years?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with all that. The digital side has picked up in a big way for us. Like I mentioned earlier, all of our marketing efforts at this point are going through various digital channels. And then I think just from from a buying online experience, you really have to pay a lot more attention to the customer experience on your site now than maybe you did 10 years ago. 10 years ago in B2B wholesale, you could, if you had an online storefront set up that your customers could purchase from, you were probably ahead of 90% of your competition back then. Today, it's not really that way. Like the industry is much more sophisticated now. A lot of your competition is going to have really great websites built on platforms like Oro that give you, a really nice customer experience. So you really have to be very mindful today of what the experience is like on your website. What is your product information up to date? Are you letting your customers know everything about the products that they need to know in order to make a purchasing decision? Can they get through your website quickly and easily? These tend to be very busy people who are trying to get on and off your website and make a purchase as quickly as possible. And are you facilitating? Are you facilitating that? I think those kind of things are probably the biggest mindset shift we've had, is just really having to focus in on that and make sure that the experience is as good as it can be, and that you're not taking that for granted, because it's much more competitive. It's much more difficult today than it was 10 years ago.
Interesting. How have you, like, we've talked a lot about the external shifts of like customer experience shifting and really the world getting much more, especially the B2B world, getting much more competitive in the digital space. How have you managed internal change as you've gone through that? Because there's this external world shifting. How have you managed the internal shifts and the change management that's come with these tectonic shifts in your business? Start with you, Josh, and then Kurt, if you have some examples or some things you've seen, I'd love to hear that.
Sure. I think internal change for us, and I think for anybody to be successful, it really has to start from the top down. So our CEO and founder, Bill Stewart, has driven that change here. And if you don't have the buy-in from the highest levels of leadership in your company to start with, then you're not going to be successful, because there are so many different players involved in your company. You really need to make sure that everybody is on the same page, that everybody is has the same goals in mind, and that they're all being driven from leadership to embrace these changes. Because it's always really easy to kind of get stuck into what you've been doing for the past several years, and even if you see the value of of some sort of digital initiative, you might not kind of embrace that, because you have what's worked for you in the past, and if you're not being incentivized from leadership in order to pursue those new initiatives, then it's easy to just kind of let those aside. So I think it does start there. It starts with leadership, making sure they're on the same page, and then going from there, it's really helpful to have a point person in the company who is kind of doing all the day-to-day, like figuring out what is our strategy, what is our tactics, making sure that everybody is following the same game plan, and that all the different departments involved are coordinated on the same page. Because another thing, like if you're not, if you're putting in some sort of an initiative, and maybe it touches a part of the company that you're not aware of, it can be really easy to come up with an idea that impacts, finance or sales or IT in some way that you just did not anticipate. And so having the person who's coordinating all that is really important. And also, again, going back to leadership, making sure that leadership is backing that and making it a priority for the company as well.
So I'm hearing, which makes a lot of sense. It's like logical, right? It's like this mix
Mhm.
of like executive alignment, executive buy-in, somebody actually executing the work
Exactly.
that is going to run it to ground and be fully coordinated across the organization. Like it
Mhm.
seems like, you know, too logical of a
You need your visionary, your operator.
yeah, exactly. You have a visionary, you have an operator, and there's alignment across the org
Right.
around what you're trying to accomplish. Anything to add to that, Kurt, from your perspective?
Yeah, so we have an interesting perspective because we're not internal within an organization and only working for one company. We get to see and work with a variety of different companies, and we see these big projects and these big implementations. And it seems like the people, and this is very much to Josh's point, the people and companies that seem to educate their salespeople, train them properly, get backing into the initiative, have them see it as a resource and a tool and a value add, and they learn how to actually use the new technology and the marketing campaigns that are happening. Those are the people that tend to have the most success, that tend to have the best kind of trajectory as far as the large investment or the large project that you've kind of pushed forward in the company. And sometimes what it takes is some success happening from that, and then that being shared across the company. So we get to see companies that kind of have this visceral, reaction to moving forward into the change, and then we see these companies that really adapt and adopt it, and those are the companies that seem to be the most successful. And to Josh's point, that takes a leader, that takes initiative, that takes someone to kind of push that initiative forward, and those are the ones that are most successful.
Actually, if I could add one quick thing to that,
Yeah,
kind of
please.
kind of building off what you were talking about on the sales team, especially if this is a new initiative within a company, like you're launching your e-com platform for the first time. It's really important to make sure the sales team and their incentives are aligned. The last thing you want is for them to see the website as competition and have them
Yes.
talking to their customers and say, "Oh, well, call me and you'll get the real deal." Like, you
Yeah.
really need to make sure that part of it is lined out ahead of time as well.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Um, Really helpful. Great insight. I think a lot of companies really struggle with alignment. I think that's just such a big challenge. I always say these kinds of like technology changes within an organization are like 10% technology and 90% business process and getting alignment. And so like I do think it's important for folks to recognize how critical this piece of technology change is within an organization. I want to shift over to some of maybe the more tactical things about um, marketing activities. Josh, you're head of digital and e-commerce marketing. What
Mhm.
are and you also have done both B2C and B2B marketing within your organization. What
Mhm.
are some of the activities that are popular in B2C that you find also work in B2B? What should B2B companies be doing more of or be doing in their
Mhm.
business?
I think probably the most important thing that B2B companies can learn from B2C companies goes back to what I taught earlier, and that's just the experience on the website. Really making sure that you're learning the best practices from B2C as far as how to transition your customers to the website, how to present products and information to them, but also there are things, at least in our experience, that don't work as well. So, a popular thing on B2C site might be, customers who bought this also bought that. And, those can work well there. Like, we have found in our experience that they don't work as well for us. Our customers tend to be filling their inventory, and they're stocking a dozen different kinds of products. And so these algorithms
Right.
are often not able to make sense of that. But yeah, as far as like what you can learn though, I think, like I said, the customer experience is key, and then social channels are important as well. I think you have to take maybe a little bit of a different tack with them on B2B than B2C. I don't think it's as easy for a B2B like wholesale distributor company specifically, to be as successful on social as it is a B2C company. But there are still important things you can do there to get in front of new customers, to make sure that you're visible in the market. I think it's a good prospecting tool, maybe a little bit less of a direct sales tool than it is for a B2C company, but certainly for prospecting. And then if you can get the right audience, like if you're on Facebook and you're, you have a group of customers who have a Facebook group, which in some cases we do, those can be really great avenues to market to. Like if you can get invited into some of those groups and like put your sales and put your information there, those can be really effective. But I think prospecting is probably the biggest thing for us, at least on a social channel, for as opposed to B2C, where they might be doing more direct selling.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anything you'd add to that, Kurt?
We're huge fans of the omni-channel approach. Similar to what Josh was talking about as far as being able to be found in multiple different places. It's just very important to be able to be in front of the potential business, no matter when and no matter where. So taking omni-channel approach and then backing that up with data, what's working and what's not working, being able to kind of track results off of it and shift focus, because trend shifts, businesses shift, competition shifts. So you really kind of got to be aligned from a data perspective and be able to be found everywhere. And then the follow up to that is you really have to have great service, right? You can't get rid of the fact that if someone is engaging from a digital perspective with the business, fulfilling orders, fulfilling things, being able to fill inventory, you have to align that with awesome kind of user experience and then end-to-end service on the back end. That makes a big difference.
Yeah, I'm hearing like real thematically between the two of you, this idea that customer experience, knowing the use case, knowing why people are coming into your website. Like Josh, this idea of like recommended products may not work if you're trying to fulfill an inventory list of 1,500 items, and it may just be noise on the site. So actually, just really understanding the use case for what people are doing in your digital channels is really critical. And we've had guests on the podcast before that have talked about, and Anna will help me with this, but have talked about this idea of just doing extensive user research, extensive like understanding of the use cases of customers to make sure that the user experience, especially the digital user experience that the company is putting forward, just matches what the customer really wants out of the experience, that it's really thoughtful to that use case. I want to ask kind of a funny question in reverse, and this spurred this, Josh, you talking about this like recommended products, users also bought X, Y, and Z that works in B2C and may not work in certain B2B use cases. What are some things that won't, like, that you see categorically is not working in B2B that works in B2C? Not to put you on the spot, but I'd love both of your feedback. Like, are there things that work in B2C that, like, if you're in a B2B business, maybe put that to the side, like that recommended products?
Well, from a pure, I guess, like marketing effort standpoint, I think there's probably nothing in B2C that just completely doesn't work in B2B, but I think you have to be very intentional with what your goal is from the activity. So it might be, like I said earlier, it might be a prospecting focused marketing effort. It could be a sales focused marketing effort, and just understanding what the channel is, what the strength of the channel is, what the strength of the channel is in B2C, and then how that might apply to your own business in B2B. So I can take Twitter, for example, and this kind of goes back to what I said before, but a B2C company, they're probably going to be putting a lot of sales and deals. They're going to be really pushing specific campaigns on their channel, and that probably works well for them. What we would likely do is we might even tie it in with a sales campaign we're doing, but it would have a prospecting bent to it. We're probably not going to be talking about pricing in that channel, but we're going to be trying to drive them over to our customer sign up page or more information about Petra. Pricing in general is can be a touchy thing with B2B. Like, often you're not going to be able to put your pricing out there anyway, because you might have contract pricing for your customers, that sort of thing. So I don't necessarily think any of the channels just don't work for B2B, but I think that you just have to be really intentional with how you're handling it and what your expectations are for it. Is it is it prospecting? Is it brand awareness? Is it sales? Just understand what your goal is and what the channel can deliver for you.
I think one of the benefits that you're kind of highlighting is this: in B2B, you typically have a lot of like loyalty, product loyalty, or loyalty to your brand, and people are making a lot more both repeat and highly expensive purchases, which creates a lot more opportunity to talk to your customers about what they value and how they value purchasing than if you're actually building a B2C website from the ground up. Like most of the B2B customers that are going digital, you may already have $100 million, $1 billion business that you are, with a well-established customer base that you're trying to create a better service channel for them. So it just gives so much advantage to that, like really customized, specific understanding of how the customer purchases. Kurt, what would you add to that or change from that, what we're talking about here?
So it's not necessarily the channels that behave differently from a B2B and a B2C standpoint. I think B2C, it's much more like marketing wise, you can take a much more emotional approach to it. You can be creative, you can be whimsical, you can kind of play off of the individual purchaser, the one person that you're going after. And B2B just behaves totally differently, right? It's much more detailed information, calculators, white papers. You really want to get specific in your approach, and you don't really play off of emotion. So it's not necessarily the social work or does good content and SEO work or does paid search work. It's you just have to take very different approaches to the channels. And that emotional doesn't really work in the B2B space.
Yeah. Anna's reminding me that this was also brought out by Jason from Brascom, who was one of our previous guests, also talked about this idea that it's much more based on the actual use case of and the need that a customer has versus a lot of the whimsy that or the like emotional connection that brands build in the B2C space. What I want to end on this question between the two of you. What trends are you all seeing in 2022 and beyond? What are some trends you all are seeing that I think you think the market should be aware of?
Well, if I could real quick jump back to recommendations for just a second. One more thought on that real quick, because I had mentioned about the people who bought this, bought that. That doesn't necessarily work, but I do think that personalization around recommendations is important for B2B. You just need to be, at least for us, we've had to be a lot more intentional about it. In some cases, really curated ourselves, like build a different version of our homepage for a different customer segment that is showing them different products. So, if they're a certain kind of retail store, we can build a page around products that they are buying now or new products that they're buying now. So it's less algorithm driven, at least for us, but we do quite a bit of personalization and recommendation around specific like segments of customers and trying to get the right products in front of them. Because we at Petra anyway, we have a very broad base of products, and they're definitely not applicable, to every single one of our customers. And we try to be really careful about getting the right products in front of the right customers. We take a little bit more of a manual approach to it as opposed to some of the algorithm approaches that are, I think, really common in B2C.
100%, especially like with, I really appreciate you bringing this up, because companies that have huge catalogs, but certain customers only purchase like a segment of your catalog, or it makes it so much more approachable to the customer to be able to only see the products that they that would be relevant to them. And I also want to be really clear that I'm not saying that recommendations don't work in B2B e-commerce. For the right use case, it may be perfect. I think you're highlighting this idea that, it is very use case driven. And it's like this idea of the opportunity that B2B companies have to create this personalized user experience, because you may, only be selling to a couple thousand customers, or even a few hundred, or,
Yeah, absolutely.
10,000, right? Versus a B2C customer or company who's, selling to the masses.
And
Yeah.
then Trent, go ahead, Kurt. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Josh, please.
Yeah, keep going. Trends that you're seeing. Where's the future headed, Joshua?
Yeah, trend wise, I think a lot of it is going to be doubling down on some of what we've talked about now, just from a customer experience on your website point of view. I think that's just going to continue to become more and more important as people are growing up now in with web presences that are on the B2C side that are very easy to use, very convenient, very sophisticated, and they're now becoming the B2B business owners. They're becoming the B2B buyers now, and they have a high level of expectation from those B2C experiences for what they can expect on their their B2B purchase experience. And I think that's just going to become more and more important over the next few years, really just getting that really dialed in, making it a really great experience that is putting the right products in front of them, and then making it very easy for them to move the process, transact, removing any kind of roadblocks that can be removed to that experience. And it doesn't end at the purchase either, because they're also, there's tracking and making sure that they know where their order is at, that they, when it's shipping, when it's arriving. There's a whole end-to-end experience there that is really, I think all B2B companies are going to have to double down on and become real masters of that entire customer experience, from when they first land on your website to when they place an order to the fulfillment process, and then reorders and going forward. I think that's probably the most important thing in my mind right now as to what needs to be focused on the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's great. It's really helpful. Kurt, what would you add? Or
yeah, I love it. We see the exact same thing. What's changed so much is the sophistication of tools that you have available to you, and that drives then all of the personalization. So completely to what Josh's point was, is being able to personalize that, but then having the service to back that all up. When you had orders coming through, or a relationship, and that was the pure play only way, you could track that, you could communicate, you could do all those things in a person to person mode, and now you have to be able to fulfill, and you have to be able to do everything that's happening digitally with great customer service. So I completely agree. It's like sophistication of tools, being very, very personalized with those tools, and then backing up with awesome customer service and awesome experience. That's the trend that we're seeing. That's the change that we're seeing, is people are buying into that, investing in that, and then following up on it.
Yeah, I really like that. I think we have time for one question. I wanted to ask Josh, how do you handle multiple decision makers and multiple purchasers in your business, or do you think about that? How do you think about that when you think about multiple touches to a purchase decision in a B2B e-commerce world?
Yeah, we do a little bit of that. I would say the majority of our customers are business owners who are simply making that decision themselves, and then purchasing what they need to. But we do have a segment of customers who have an approval chain, and that's actually something we're focused on right now. Is like, how do we make that experience a little bit smoother for them, so that once they make a purchase, they understand. It really goes back to visibility and sophistication, that they understand where they're at in the process. So they have placed their order, and we have the order, but who their district manager, whoever it might be, hasn't yet approved the order. So making sure that they can see where that's at, and then give the district manager, whoever the approver is, really easy insight into, this is what the order is. If they have some sort of a spending cap, this is where they're at, and then that they can provide feedback as well to the buyer. Say, okay, well, this order is being rejected for this reason, or approval may not need a reason, but the communication and the visibility, I think, is probably the most key thing there. And that's something that we've been expanding on a little bit as far as our customer base goes, and we're really thinking a lot about that right now for some of the future upgrades to our site and how we're going to facilitate that and make it a cleaner process, because it's at least for on our site, it's not where we want it to be today, and something you have to keep going back and continuing to improve and become more sophisticated as we go.
I mean, this is such a case for the difference between B2B and B2C, right? This idea that like even down to a user level, you're provisioned to look, I have an annual spend cap of $20,000, my division, my team, my whatever, my
Or
store.
a specific set of products.
Yeah, for this specific set of products, right? Like we are, and this goes back to this personalization or the idea of like really creating access controls to, as a user, I can log into my B2B e-commerce platform, and I know that like I've spent 40% of my budget, and and this is like the budget that I have until the end of the year to purchase inventory or whatever else. Kurt, would you add anything to that? You just see so many different projects. I'm curious if you have any additions to that.
I mean, not in specific to that one, because we don't look at it marketing wise from the end user fulfillment, from the business's side. So it's a little bit different from the chair that I sit in. We try to create the need and try to create the awareness. But chain of command and the multiple people and multiple steps that it takes from a B2B purchase perspective is a big way to be able to make sure that everyone can see it, everyone knows what's going on. But we don't see it from inside the business very often as far as marketers.
Yeah. Okay. That's super helpful. You all, this has been incredibly valuable. I so appreciate your time and insight. I think we've got some great insights that have come out of this. I've really enjoyed the time. It's great to talk to folks who are really sort of setting the strategy for where B2B e-commerce is going. So thank you to you two visionaries for spending some time with us here. And with that, we hope everyone has a great day. Thanks for joining. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.